It's now time for Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. It began as a podcast, went live on the net, and transformed into a full-blown empire. It's the only daily boxing talk show on the planet, hosted by the only guy with the balls to do it. Many have stepped into the ring. Many have tried to take the belt. And one by one, they've fallen. Another victim of the undisputed heavyweight champion of Boxing Talk Radio. Talkin' Boxing with Billy C is on now.
My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart.
Coming to you live from the Billy C Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calogero, and it's time for the Billy C Show. Good morning, good day, good evening. Whenever you're watching, whenever you're listening, I hope you're doing okay. Today's show is being brought to us in part by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant located on St. Simon's Island in Georgia. Check out the website, www.salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com. We'll give my man a call, 912-268-2328, 912-268-2328. Find out why I go all the way to St. Simon's for an authentic Italian meal. And today's show is being brought to us in part by my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold. And you can get a copy of this book right now while you're watching or listening to this very show. Just visit barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com. If you're looking to get a signed copy, don't worry about it. Just visit our website, billycboxing.com, and click on the book. And by the way, you want more than one copy? Going to give some away for gifts? Then just drop me an email for some special pricing. Billy@TalkinBoxing, TalkinBoxing.com. My man Dax Khan and Alex Perpali are scheduled to join us a little bit later. We're going to give you some post-fight thoughts today on the Mikey Garcia, Robert Easter Jr. unification world lightweight fight that took place last night, as well as the fights that were on the undercard. Also a big fight over in England featuring two of the top heavyweights that don't have a belt. One used to have a belt, Joseph Parker going up against Dillian Whyte. We'll tell you how that fared. We also got some news to chat about, and of course a preview of the big fight in the light heavyweight division, which is next weekend between Sergey Kovalev and Eldar Alvarez, with a emphasis on the co-main event. Dmitry Bivol will be taking on Isaac Chilimba, and it's kind of projected that the two winners of those fights will be facing each other in the future. So we'll be talking about all of that stuff. But let's kick it off with arguably the biggest fight of the weekend, Mikey Garcia against Robert Easter Jr. Each of them went into the fight undefeated. Each of them went into the fight with a world title. But only Mikey Garcia emerged from after the fight still undefeated and with two belts. Joining me right now to get his thoughts on this fight is my man Sal Rocky Senecola. Sal, what'd you think of Mikey Garcia against Robert Easter Jr.?
Robert Easter Jr. and Mikey Garcia. I'll tell you what, Bill. It was a good fight. It wasn't a great fight, and there's definitely flaws, or there's definitely some holes that we got to patch up or see Mikey Garcia patch up. He was a good, effective fighter going in. Easter had a jab, a good jab he tried to establish. But like I said earlier off air, I mean, the jab is a great weapon. It's used to create the distance. It's used to make the other fighter think twice before he throws a punch. It's used for a multitude of reasons. But everything comes off the jab. And when Easter established his jab, nothing else came off of it. It was hard for him to get on track to put punches together. And Mikey Garcia had an answer when those punches did come. And Mikey Garcia was a little heavier with his hands. I would have liked to have seen a little more head movement from Mike. But I think that, and using the ring to cut it off and to try and establish his own distance and stuff. But it was a good fight, as I said. It was a great fight. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you know, I know the scores, the way the judges scored it was a shutout, 116, 111, 117, 110. You had it the way the third judge had it, 118, 109, all in favor of Garcia. But and I honestly didn't score this fight while it was taking place. You know, at the end of the fight, I clearly thought that Mikey won the fight. But, you know, what I couldn't stop thinking about during the fight was that it's that same old judging criteria. In other words, Robert Easter Jr. landed way more jabs. I mean, when he was throwing the jab effectively in the center of the ring, he was landing the jab, or at least throwing them. I don't know how flush they were landing. Mikey Garcia, seemingly, based on the scorecards, was winning rounds because he landed a couple of harder shots. And I've always wondered, you know, what's the formula that judges should adhere to? You know, how many jabs equal a power shot? You know, with the exception of when he was dropped, when Garcia hit the deck, what a beautiful punch that was. I mean, just knocked him right down.
Beautiful combination.
You know, I mean, Mikey usually, one thing I've always liked about Mikey Garcia is that he is very proficient at giving back more than he takes. In other words, if his opponent goes in there and throws 5 punches, you normally see Mikey Garcia come back with 8 or 9. And I really wasn't noticing that throughout the fight. He did it in spurts, and I think he was stealing rounds. Listen, I love Mikey Garcia, but
I know you do.
But I didn't think that was one of his top performances. You and I talked a little bit before we went on air. I really didn't think it was one of his top performances. He had to work the body. He had all that body to work. And quite honestly, Sal, I didn't think he was landing his body shots correctly. I mean, they were landing in such a way that he was making contact, but all of his power, it was almost like he was hitting with the heel of his glove. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he was. It looked like the cuff or the heel of the glove. It looked. It didn't look like he was digging into it. It didn't look like he had the follow through, like the one punch sets up another. And I thought he could have been a little more effective to the body. Maybe he was being tentative for a reason. Maybe, you know, he might have respected a little bit more. But I think, like we said, I think he's got some holes he's got to patch up. And because I'll tell you what, I knew it was going to give him a hell of a night. You and I talked about this too, and I don't want to steal any thunder, but I think he's going to have a real hard night against Errol Spence.
Yeah, well, he's made no, qualms about fighting him. He's called him out. Spence was ringside for the fight, was asked about it. He says, he gives him props because he's daring to be a great fighter. He wants to move up and dethrone me, meaning Errol Spence is saying this. He said, but it's not going to happen. I think he has great skills, but I see myself winning. Garcia said after the fight, we fought another undefeated champion. He brought the best out of me and made me work. I'm always looking for the biggest challenges. I want Errol Spence next. I think that this is the biggest fight. I'm prepared to take the challenge. That's the fight I want. The thing I love about Mikey Garcia is exactly that, Sal.
Yes.
That this guy does challenge himself. And, you know, he so far, he's come through. He's 40-0 with 30 knockouts. He's moved up and down in weight. I saw some photos of him at the weigh-in. He looked gaunt and skinny. I was like, oh, man, maybe it was this time he overtrained. And then fight night, the guy, fills out and looks beautiful, So some guys can do that to their body as far as a potential fight with Garcia. I do see that fight happening as the next fight. For some reason, Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. want to wait a little while before they have that fight. Keith Thurman is MIA. There is a fight coming up for one of the vacant titles between Sean Porter and Danny Garcia. So that name, the winner of that fight, will be in the mix. But I do see Garcia and Errol Spence going at it in their next fights, to be honest with you. And I'll tell you what, I already think that Mikey Garcia is a pound-for-pound top fighter. Like I said, it wasn't his best performance against Easter last night. I do think that Easter, the height was giving Mikey some trouble. And I would really like to see him develop a body punch because, like we said off air, I tell you what, you go into a fight against Errol Spence and you don't throw an effective body shot, I think you're in trouble.
No, you're 100% right. You got to slow him down somehow. And, of course, that's what body shots usually do. They'll definitely be deterrent, and they'll slow you down. And if you're not careful, you're going to be picking yourself up off the canvas because they'll drop you right away. But, like I said, he's got some homework to do, especially if he's going to key on Errol Spence and, train specifically for that style of fight. And I think he's got a lot ahead of him because I see Errol Spence doing what he does naturally and just adapts and just does and just pulls out a victory that he earns and that he fights for.
I really love Mikey Garcia. I mean,
I know you do.
But I mean, he's not only in the ring but out of the ring. I mean, he's such a good ambassador for the sport of boxing.
Yes, he is.
And he's self-promoting. In a way, he's forced to self-promote. I saw some really good. My man Mitch sent me this video clip of him working out that they put together, and all his trainers and everything. They're eating all this beef, and he comes over and they're like, "Oh no, you got to be careful. You can't be eating beef." And they give him a plate of carrots. So and it was kind of funny. And he's just, the fans love him. Before the fight, he's in his dressing room. It seemed like a mariachi band. I mean, they're all playing music and having a good time. I mean, this kid was loose. Hey, hats off to Garcia. I hope he does challenge himself and fight Errol Spence. That's what great fighters do, Sal.
Yes.
They challenge themselves, and they take on challenges that most people think they're nuts to do. When people are talking about fighters and talking about great fighters, these are the ones, the guys that are truly great are the ones that have challenged themselves and come out on top when most people say they shouldn't do this, it's a mistake, blah, blah, blah. And this is one of the reasons I love Mikey Garcia. So we'll see what happens. He's a unified lightweight champion right now. Remember, he was the junior welterweight champion. Prior to this, he had both belts and decided to keep the lighter weight class, which was interesting. Also on that card in the heavyweight division, Luis Ortiz got back in the ring following his knockout loss to Deontay Wilder and took care of Razvan Cojanu at 2 minutes and 8 seconds of the second round. What a shot that was. Knocked him out. Knocked him down. Cojanu got up and tried to get up and then fell through the ropes and tried to get up again and then fell forward, and the referee waved it off. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Ortiz next. He looked good, but no disrespect to Cojanu, even though he was a world title challenger, did fight Joseph Parker for his title. And he was also went pretty deep in the ESPN heavyweight tournament. He's still not a top, in my opinion, a true top heavyweight out there today. So we'll see what happens with Ortiz. Interesting thing, it has as his age all of a sudden 39. What, is he getting younger, Sal?
Is he getting younger? To me too.
Yeah, I know. But it'll be interesting to see. I have a feeling that Deontay Wilder, providing he gets by Dominic Breazeale, which many believe is going to be his next fight, if he will give Ortiz a rematch, it is a sellable fight, and we were always talking about options for Deontay, and this is one. In another interesting fight on this card, Mario Barrios improved to 22-0 with 13 knockouts when he knocked out Jose Roman at 3 minutes of the 8th round. It's considered a knockout because Roman's corner would not let him come out. He drops to 24 wins, 3 losses, and a draw. It was an interesting fight. Barrios is a real deal. This kid was moved along correctly. He's been moved up. His level of opposition has been moved up. And I think when he gets his title shots, Sal, his world title shot, that he's going to come through. What was your thoughts on that fight?
Yeah, I thought so too. I think it was a steady progression of how he's been moved up, and it's it's a good diet. He rose to the occasion. We see that he's learned and that he's expanded developed his own talents on that level. And he was very dominant. I had him pitching a shutout, and although he had a good opponent who was a steady figure in there and durable, no, I liked what I saw from him. I think he's got some good things coming in front of him.
Some other fights that took place yesterday that I'd like to chat about before Dax and Alex come on later. In a really, and to talk about an entertaining heavyweight fight, how about the Dillian Whyte against Joseph Parker fight? What a fight that was, in case you guys missed it. Dillian Whyte won a unanimous decision, 113, 112, 115, 110, 114, 111, all in favor of him against Joseph Parker. But this was a fight in which both fighters hit the deck. As a matter of fact, Dillian Whyte got credited for 2 knockdowns, even though the referee missed one there. But the second knockdown that took place in the 9th round, I give Joseph Parker a lot of credit for even getting up after that fight, after that knockdown. I mean, it did not look like when a fighter goes down the way Parker did, especially a heavyweight, very rarely do they get up. And then, as you know, just if that wasn't enough drama for you, in the final round, the 12th and final round, Parker drops Dillian Whyte. And Dillian Whyte was still in all kinds of trouble and was smart enough to just hold on until the final bell rung. What a fight. Here's the thing. You know, I could see why your boy Deontay Wilder didn't want to fight Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte is still a learning process, but he's a dangerous guy. But here's the thing where I noticed. First of all, Anthony Joshua couldn't knock Parker out. Not that I think Parker was doing more moving around against Anthony Joshua than he did against Dillian Whyte. But here's something I wanted to notice. Wanted to see if you noticed. You know how we're always saying that Deontay made a mistake in not taking the fight with Anthony Joshua, and he even went as far as to say that he thought that 15 million was crackhead money and all this stupid, ignorant statements that he says. But look at this. Here's a great example. Joseph Parker took, he negotiated up and got more than what was originally offered to him to fight Anthony Joshua. And in 2 fights, the first one with Anthony Joshua, which he lost his title, and then this fight with Dillian Whyte, which he lost. Do you realize, Sal, that this guy has made more money and his value now is at a point where Joseph Parker, whether he wins or not, I mean, if he lost 5 more fights in a row, I wouldn't be saying this. But the truth of the matter is that he has upped his value just to get in these kinds of fights, something that Deontay really hasn't done. What's your thoughts on that? The fact that Parker really is making more money right now. Now, granted, he's fighting some tough fights, but he is making more money on a regular basis.
That's, like I said, part of it is promotion, part of promoting the fighter correctly and making him marketable. And but that's something that should be a consideration, and I'd be kind of concerned about that. And if I was Deontay Wilder or so, how come other fighters are getting equal or amount of money, maybe even more, when they're not a champion, or this, that, and everything else? And like we said, some fighters do not have the right promotional team behind them. And if they did, I mean, we were spoiled to the antics, but the true blue promotion that a Don King would do, a Lou Duva would do, and a Bob Arum would do from the 80s. These guys were not only promoting their top fighters, but I mean, they were creating opportunities and making things happening. And today a lot of people count too much on social media to promote fighters, to do this, to do that. That's why fighters say the off the wall things to try and keep themselves out there. And I think the old grassroots was a good proven formula. And but to answer your original question, yeah, I think there should be some concern of why he can't get that kind of money.
Well, no. What I'm saying is once you Parker was making good. Parker was making good money in his home country, and nobody knew who Parker was. And then he fights Anthony Joshua. He goes the distance. Now all of a sudden, to get him to get in the ring, he's making multi-million dollars, and everybody knows who Joseph Parker is. So his value has gone up. One of the problems with Deontay Wilder is even people in the United States don't know who he is. And by saying that he wants to kill somebody in the ring and doing all of this, you know, his approach to his self-promotion is it's a negative business model, if you know what I mean. I mean, yes, you get good press, and you know they say any press is good press, but you know there is a line, especially in today's ultra let's not offend anybody world, you know, that we live in. I don't know. My point that I was trying to make here is Parker is stocking up his bank account, and Deontay Wilder still has only made the biggest payday of his career was against Luis Ortiz and did not hit $2.5 million. So it is what it is. Another heavyweight fight that was interesting on the undercard of Whyte Parker was Derek Chisora. Derek Chisora is a guy that is just a tough man. That's you know, I never really looked at him as a I don't want to use the word talented heavyweight because he wins, but you know he's not a technically sound heavyweight, but he won the other night. Derek Chisora improved to 29 wins, 8 losses, with 21 coming by knockout. When he knocked out Carlos Takam in the 1 minute and 1 second of the 8th round. Takam had been ranked as high as number 6 by the IBF. Takam drops at 35-5 with a draw. After the fight, which I found kind of funny, Eddie Hearn was saying, "Oh, you know, trying to give Chisora all the credit, you know," and he says, "Oh, I'm glad he fought, even though he had a shoulder injury, and he you know, he didn't complain about it. He stepped in and fought." And Chisora tells the press later on that he really didn't have an injury. He was just trying to get more money out of Eddie Hearn to make him go through.
Are you kidding
This
me?
is the kind of character that Chisora is. I mean, he's kind of funny. It is. But I mean, what do you think? You know, hey, I'm hurt. I'll still fight. Can you throw me some more money? You know, that's pretty funny, don't you think?
That you know what? Like I said, these guys are self-promoting. That's funny.
You know, some other news I wanted to touch on real quick was Billy Joe Saunders has agreed to fight Demetrius Andrade and put his title on the line. You know, they reached a deal. This fight was going to go to purse bid for the WBO. They reached a deal. This is an interesting fight, and it's also interesting because of the two promotional teams. Matchroom Sports, Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Sports, their biggest rival in England is Frank Warren. And Frank Warren is with Billy Joe Saunders. That's Billy Joe Saunders' promoter. And Demetrius Andrade, as we all know, has just recently signed with Eddie Hearn. These two guys cut the deal. They made it happen prior to the purse bid. They didn't want some third, wild card to come in and take it. And it's reported, in most cases, it hasn't been made official, but the DAZN, the Zone service, is looking like they're going to be the ones to broadcast it here in the United States. They're getting some big fights on that streaming service, at least initially. We haven't seen it yet. Right. Anthony Joshua was the first one. But it seems like they're tying up some fights on there. What do you think?
Well, you predicted it, and I think it's coming to fruition. But it's funny, Bill. I just go back to what I used to always say. You know, if two fighters really want to fight each other, they'll make it happen. And here we go against the normal path, and we see a fight's going to come to fruition. And like I said, if Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua really wanted to fight each other, all the blanks would have been filled in.
Yeah, well, you know what? I can't help but consider this about your boy Wilder. Well, first of all, to close this thought, a location and a date has not been announced yet for Billy Joe Saunders, Demetrius Andrade. You know, you would think it would be over in England, because of Billy Joe Saunders, but the zone taking this service and wanting to be, make a splash here in the United States, it may not be, out of the realm to have to see this fight land someplace in the United States. So we'll keep our eyes on that. But, getting back to your boy Deontay Wilder, turning down big money deals and then him demanding that he's worth more has kind of followed him around. We were talking about Dillian Whyte and his knockout, drag-out, very entertaining fight with Joseph Parker last night. Remember, Eddie Hearn offered Deontay Wilder $5 million, which I think it eventually rose to $7 million, to fight Dillian Whyte in England on an undercard of Anthony Joshua's fight, and Deontay turned it down, wouldn't fight it. So even if he took that fight, and I think Deontay could beat Dillian Whyte. I think that he's got more power, obviously, than Joseph Parker. I think Joseph Parker is more talented in terms of his pure boxing ability, but Deontay Wilder has that freakish punching power, and I think he could knock Dillian Whyte out. So there's another fight that he let pass through his fingers, Sal, and maybe that could have been the fight that got him more value, and maybe the offer to fight Anthony Joshua, should he have beaten Dillian Whyte, would have been substantially bigger. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's an interesting scenario, but here you go. You have both heavyweight champions in this situation, both feeling they're the elitists, that they're the ones that deserve top billing. And when you approach a Deontay Wilder and say, "Hey, I want you to fight on my undercard, or you can fight on this one," it should have been maybe promoted as a co-feature.
Right.
It
would have been.
It would have been, but I'm sure it would have been. But again, wait
a minute. Can I ask you? Are you suggesting that ego played a part in this?
Wherever you go, ego.
But is that what you're suggesting, Rocky?
Well, absolutely. There was a time when I wanted to. Yeah, I think ego had something to do with it. I think also, like I said, we haven't seen the best decisions being made from the Deontay Wilder camp.
But wouldn't you have learned from that one? There's one.
Hypothetically, I mean, when he was offered up to $15 million to fight Anthony Joshua. Oh, we did the math. He hasn't earned $2.5 million maximum for fights, and that's 10 fights away for him to maximize to get what he could have gotten in one fight. And number one, number two, there's no promises for tomorrow in the boxing game. So when you do a 2-fight deal, looking at possibly earning $30 million, your risk reward is a lot better than what you're doing over a course of 5 years. So. Yeah, it doesn't seem like some of the best decisions have been made and hammered out from the Deontay Wilder side. No matter what my thoughts are, who could beat who, and you know how I feel about that. I think that Deontay Wilder has not been advised maybe properly with seeing all the realms and all the full circle of the big picture, not just a small microscopic picture in front of him.
The bottom line, my point was that should he had taken the fight against Dillian Whyte, and it didn't happen, but if he had, number one, his purses would have jumped from, his max of a $2.5 million, or actually less, when he fought Ortiz. All of a sudden he would have had that $5 million purse. He would have never stepped in the ring for less than that again. So immediately he would have been worth more for the potential Ortiz fight. He would have been worth more for a potential fight with Anthony Joshua. So it was a bad business decision not to fight Dillian Whyte. And instead of following it with a better decision to get back on track, he followed it with even a worse decision by turning down. You got to remember, he turned down a 2-fight deal worth $20 million. He turned down $15 million guaranteed to fight Anthony Joshua, and they gave him an option, though he could pick any bum cupcake opponent that he wanted to fight in a fight this time of year, in the fall, and get paid $5 million, twice that he ever made, more than he ever made so far. and then have the showdown with Anthony Joshua in April. They're going to have a showdown. It's going to happen. And it's probably going to happen in April anyway. So once again, a bad decision by Deontay Wilder, preventing himself from making a lot of money. Listen, he is being ill-advised. There's no question about it. He's not the sharpest tool in the shed. We all know that. You know, he's a couple of French fries short of a Happy Meal. We know that. But the truth of the matter is the people that he trusts, the people he's put around him, and the people who make a percentage of his money, that's the other part that's so mind-boggling, are leading him the wrong way, Sal.
Well, and that's the whole synopsis that you just went over. And is it truly one side or the other? And, you know, we want to say it's his advisors that are being the ones that are ill-advising him what to do, what next, and how to position himself. But, you know, you look at it, and is he the boss? Is he just looking for what's going on in his world right now and making the decisions once presented with is he being presented with the black and white facts? Does he understand what's going on? Because, like I said, when fighters want to fight each other, they'll get in the ring. They'll make it happen. And I think he's made a few bad moves. And not that it's not going to all come to fruition for him over the next year and a half, 2 years. It's just that I think, according to what you and I may have thought would have been a great path for him to take to maximize his value, it's not happening. And yeah, he would have been showcased on the co-feature of Joshua. He would have been showcased. There would have been a demand. There would have been more, as you said, his equity would have risen by allowing the world to see him fight a co-feature with Anthony Joshua defending his title as well.
Listen, we got to take a break. We're going to have Dax Khan come on here in a sec. But let me just say this. Egos in sports are the worst thing. It has throughout the history of sports, ego has been the cause of many a problem. And, you know, look at Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather's ego is preventing his promotional team from really excelling in the United States. You know, Floyd Mayweather's ego, Canelo's ego with negotiating for other fights to have their names first. That's ego, right? Look at it this way. I'm going to leave you with this. Look at it this way. I'm not a Yankees fan, okay? I'm not a New York Yankees fan in baseball. Easy. But, you know, one of the guys that I respect the most was Derek Jeter. And Derek Jeter, which could go down as one of the, you know, best shortstops in baseball, at least best teammate, clutch hitter, everything. The guy never got in trouble. He once said, you want to be a Yankee, you got to leave your ego at the door. You can have your ego when you leave the clubhouse, but you can't bring it inside. And it proved to be very successful for him. And I would suggest that Deontay Wilder let go of his ego, because really he should let go of my ego.
Billy C will be right back.
Broken air conditioning, $4,400. Failing refrigerator, $2,500. Don't let outrageous repair and replacement bills like these bust your budget. Get the First American Home Warranty Plan. And when a covered appliance or system breaks, we'll repair it or replace it for you.
We had a high-end dishwasher go kaput. They put it in a brand new dishwasher.
We have plans that cover air conditioning, most appliances, plus heating, plumbing, electrical systems, and much more. Plans start as low as $25 a month. Why let a major appliance or system breakdown bust your budget or go through the hassle of finding trustworthy service people? Last year alone, we saved our customers over $120 million. Don't wait until something breaks and you're stuck with a huge bill.
You save a lot of money.
It's absolutely worth it.
If you don't have First American Warranty, get it.
Call 1-800-946-6234 for your free no-obligation quote.
Need relief from backaches and stiffness in your hips or down your legs? Then you need Dr. Ho's Back Relief Belt, the innovative technology to support and decompress your spine. And now it's covered by Medicare.
Every patient with back pain should be wearing this belt.
Nothing gave me instant relief except for the Dr. Ho belt.
Feel good while standing, walking, driving, doing housework, and while laying down. And now Dr. Ho's patented belt is available at our best price ever. It's even covered by Medicare. Order now and get the easy-to-use hand pump and back rehabilitation DVD free.
You know, similar belts can cost you almost $1,000, but my belts won't cost you $500, not $300, not even $200. I will give you my special TV price.
And remember, Dr. Ho's belt is covered by Medicare.
If you know a friend or family member that suffers with pain, get them my system today. Help them live with less pain, be more active, and get back to doing the things they love. Give them the gift of health.
Listen to this important message. If you owe money to the IRS, you will want to hear this. Penalties and interest compound daily on your back taxes, putting you under a mountain of debt. Tax 10,000 has years of experience connecting people with tax resolution specialists. Working through the IRS Fresh Start program, they will handle all the necessary forms, and if you qualify, you may end up saving thousands of dollars. Call Tax 10,000 at 800-773-4604.
Are you currently on Medicare? In other words, do you carry the red, white, and blue Medicare card? If so, are you suffering from chronic back pain? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a pain-relieving back brace covered by Medicare at little to no cost, shipped directly to your home for free. These medical-grade back braces are ideal for lower back pain, arthritis, spinal disorders, and other chronic back problems. Will you qualify for a medical-grade back brace? Call Back Brace America at 1-800-290-8300.
Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're watching and listening to the Billy C. Show. Glad you could be with us today. And joining us right now to give us his thoughts on Mikey Garcia's win last night is my man Dax Khan. Good morning, Dax.
Morning. How are you?
I'm doing okay. A couple of big fights last night. We'll start off with Mikey Garcia beating Robert Easter Jr. I didn't. Sal and I were talking about this earlier. I didn't know if you were listening, but you know how much I like Mikey Garcia. I know you and I disagreed on him over a couple of things, but I love the guy. I think he's a top pound-for-pound fighter. Didn't think it. I mean, he won. He won the fight. I didn't think it was one of his best performances, but he won the fight. What was your thought of the fight itself?
It wasn't the most exciting of fights. If you kind of want to make a little bit of a comparison when you think about this height and reach difference, and I was, not that it was the same quality, but it almost reminded me of the first Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns fight, where Tommy was moving around and outboxing Ray until later on when Ray found a way to close the distance with that height and reach disadvantage. And then once he did, he really took it to Tommy, and we seen that last night. Robert Easter, because of the jab, was able to keep Mikey, at distance, but he wasn't as effective with that jab as really made out, in my opinion, anyway. And he never sat down and did any work. It was a lot of times it was just like a flickering jab. Mikey was catching a lot of those on his gloves. Inside, I thought Robert Easter Jr. had a very good game plan, to tie Mikey up and wear him out. But it wasn't the best of his performances, and I think Robert Easter Jr., he should stay in that division. Obviously, he has some big fights for him. But, other than that, it was a good fight. It wasn't a great fight, as you stated.
The other thing I had noticed, Dax, and Sal and I were talking about it earlier as well, is that Mikey Garcia, although he's not known for body work, he knew that he had to work the body a bit against Easter, especially since he had so much to work. But I couldn't help but notice that he doesn't throw a good body punch. Here's a guy that I think is one of the better fighters in the sport. I love him. I love the fact that he throws a lot of punches. He's accurate. He's elusive. But when I was watching him deliver the body shots, I'm not saying he didn't have the openings, because he definitely had the openings. He just wasn't landing them in an effective manner. Did you notice that, and what were your thoughts?
Yeah, he had to reach around those long arms of Robert Easter Jr. I did notice that a few times. But, Mikey Garcia's never been known for his body work. So him to do that, he really had to step out of his comfort zone. And the thing about Mikey Garcia, in that fight, I think that really wore Robert Easter Jr. down was the fact that Mikey just kept coming forward. And the one thing that I did see about Mikey last night that I was kind of disappointed in is a lot of times he chased Robert Easter Jr. and rather than cut off the ring. So I'm not really sure, it was a good fight. It wasn't a great fight. That's all I can say. I think Mikey won clearly. I don't think Robert Easter Jr. was really that effective with the jab. Maybe if he would have followed it up with some 1-2s. I definitely, in my opinion, I think Mikey Garcia, as good of a fighter as he is, he should stay away from 147 pounds. Or if he should go near 147, maybe test the waters with a Lamont Peterson or Lucas Matisse, who just lost to Manny Pacquiao, maybe Manny Pacquiao himself with that WBA belt, a little dig at Top Rank, Jamal James, kind of test the waters. But, you don't want to go up there and go in there against an Errol Spence because, a very big man against a very good little man, we always know how that ends, and I don't think that would end well for Mikey Garcia at all.
I do respect Mikey for wanting to challenge himself, and I do think that fight will be made, to be honest with you. But and it will be their next fights. Also on that card, Luis Ortiz returned to the ring, devastating knockout over Razvan Cojanu. First of all, did you notice that Ortiz is 39 now? Wasn't he 41 against Wilder?
I thought he was 40.
I thought he was 41. Against Wilder, and I even checked, and even BoxRec is saying 39 now, and I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, I wish I still had the sheet.
That's always been his correct listed age.
Well, how many years has he been 39?
Joke in boxing.
His correct listed age.
Yeah, but how old? How many years has he been 39? Come on, man, come on. But anyway,
how many years have you been?
Hey now, I'm still younger than Sal, but still. So what
I
do you
was saying in the chat room, me and Joel were saying, Sal Senicola versus Luis Ortiz. We can build that. How old are they?
How old? Really, how old are they? But what was your thoughts of the performance? I know it only went 2 rounds, but any thoughts on that?
I thought Luis Ortiz looked good. He looked good in the Deontay Wilder fight, but of course, he got tired later on, and Deontay Wilder was able to survive that. He really showed his mettle in that fight. I just think time is running short on Luis Ortiz. They kind of waited him out a little bit, and those couple instances where he had the PED being caught, for PEDs a few times, that didn't help his career. So, all things against him. But I think maybe 1 or 2 more fights he has left in him, and if he performs like he did on Saturday night, he was very. He was kind of conservative with his punches. He used his jab well. He has a tremendously long reach at 84 inches, and he timed those punches well. And I agree, not that Cojanu is a world beater, but it was a good fight for Luis Ortiz to go back in there, and see what the legs still got under him. Of course, in those little 2 rounds. And as far as Cojanu, what was he thinking about showboating against Ortiz? I didn't get that part. Was that part of the game plan? Was it because James Toney was in the corner?
What, after the first round? I know he went back to his corner like he was saying, let's speed it up. Let's not, because their game plan was to try to wear Ortiz down, according to the commentating anyway. But do you think this sets up a rematch with Deontay Wilder next? Deontay Wilder has been given at least verbal permission by the WBC to seek a rematch with Ortiz prior to fighting his mandatory against Brazil, because his mandatory technically isn't due. I think, for some reason, December is when that was due. So what's your thoughts on that? Are we going to see a Wilder-Ortiz rematch?
I don't. Maybe. I don't know. If this fight against Joshua can't get made, then possibly. But I really don't see any reason for it. But and anything's possible in boxing. But I actually think the only fight that would make sense for everybody is Joshua against Wilder against Joshua. But I would like to see maybe Luis Ortiz against Dillian Whyte.
Yeah, I'd like to see Wilder against Whyte. But anyway, let's move on. Mario Barrios looked good knocking out Jose Roman in that fight. I was wondering about Barrios because this is a fighter that has been moved along carefully. He has been stepped up in his last couple of fights, but this was a huge step up, I thought, and he handled it pretty well. I mean, I think he proved, at least to me, that he's the real deal. What's your thoughts?
Well, he proved to me that him and Luis Ortiz walk around about the same weight because he was about. He had to be a junior middleweight on fight night. He was huge, and not that Barrios doesn't have skill. He's a skilled kid, but he's having that growth spurt. He's shooting up in weight. Jose Roman only had 2 weeks to prepare for the fight. He lost his last fight. He's not exactly that a world-class boxer, more or less. He's a part-time fighter. He's a student. I think that putting Barrios in there against guys like Jose Roman, he's been in there against a few lightweights, guys that he's had a lot of size over. When they do step him up, it's going to hurt him. It's going to be very detrimental to him. Remember, this was a 142-pound catchweight fight for some WBA Intercontinental title. So Barrios, I think the kid might have the goods, but putting him in there against fights like this, it's hard to tell exactly how good he is because he's in there against guys that were made for him to look good. Let's see how he is when he actually steps up against a guy that has a full training camp that is actually, a welterweight. And I don't think that Barrios is going to make junior welterweight, which is supposedly the division that he campaigns in, and what they were saying in the post fight. But there's a lot of guys in both those divisions that are big, that are strong, that are a whole lot more skilled. So even if he should choose 140 or 147, the idea of this kid in a year beating any of these top names, I don't see that. And that's the part where they take too many steps. They go from step C to step Z, and that's how they hurt a fighter, especially when you put him in there against showcase guys like Roman.
In my opinion, the most exciting fight over the weekend, Dillian Whyte against Joseph Parker, back and forth fight. Dillian Whyte was lucky to hold on in that last round. We had talked, especially you had mentioned what a great chin Joseph Parker had, and he kind of showed that against Anthony Joshua. I was impressed that he got up when he was dropped in the 9th. What was your thoughts on this fight and both fighters?
As far as the chin goes, isn't he some sort of relation to David Tua?
They fight very similar. Well, the chin is very similar.
No, I read somewhere, sure there's some sort of relation, cousins, second cousins or something like that. And David Tua, that guy had a chin on him. So, those Samoan guys, they can really take a punch, But, of course, Joseph Parker, what he lacks is that David Tua explosiveness. I think Joseph Parker, he held on to that WBO title, as we see now, a little bit longer than he should have. Even the win over Andy Ruiz Jr. wasn't all that good. But Dillian Whyte himself, I think he gets better in every outing. We thought that in the fight against Lucas Brown that maybe he was just a very old, overrated Lucas Brown that allowed him to look good. But Dillian Whyte, in all his fights since the Anthony Joshua fight, has gotten better. He did slip a little bit in the Derek Chisora fight, where he got wrapped up in trying to go for excitement rather than going for the win and taking less punishment. So, it's an interesting fight, and I definitely think that if the Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder fight doesn't get made, that the Dillian Whyte and the Deontay Wilder fight is what should happen, and that would be the best for the division, and then the winner of that fight go for all the marbles. Or Dillian Whyte versus Anthony Joshua, that would be, right now with the rematch there, with the role that Dillian Whyte's on, that would be huge, and that would really upset the apple cart. As for Joseph Parker, there were so many things he has to improve on. He has to improve on his speed. He has to improve on his work rate in the ring, or else Joseph Parker is going to be a flash in the pan, a fly-by-night guy that in 2 or 3 years nobody even remembers who he was.
Hey, Sal, how about, since your boy is always looking for the easiest ways out, it appears, how about Deontay Wilder going up against Joseph Parker? Joseph Parker is a name. Joseph Parker is a former world champion. Deontay Wilder could go in there looking to knock him out, something that Dillian Whyte and Anthony Joshua failed to do. What's your thoughts on the possibility of that fight? In Wilder's eyes, that could be a safer fight than fighting Dillian Whyte, and of course he doesn't want to fight AJ. So I mean, what's your thoughts on a possible matchup with Parker?
Well, I still feel that he does want to fight AJ, but we'll go on to another story about that.
Why didn't he sign the contract? He had the contract in front of him.
All right. I think that Joseph Parker would be a good fight for him. I think that he would be in a position to look good. He'll win, and I think he could be the guy that could stop Parker. Is that going to be a good thing to keep in his quiver and to have on his resume? It could be, but like I said, Bill, there's only one fight I want to see really in the heavyweight division, and that is Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder. And we're going to get a lot of fluff before we get the stuff. So everything else is secondary as far as I'm concerned. It has some substance, but like I said, the only fight in the heavyweight division for the titles and the championship and a whole ball of wax is Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua.
Hey, Dax, Demetrius Andrade bought out his contract with Star Boxing and Banner Promotions, and couldn't have been 2 weeks later, maybe just 2 weeks later, he signed with Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Sports. And over the past several days, his ordered fight between Billy Joe Saunders that was about to go to purse bid ends up getting a deal made again between two arch rivals, something similar that used to happen with Don King and Bob Arum. They hated each other, but they made fights happen. Billy Joe Saunders against Demetrius Andrade is a fight that's going to happen. There's no date yet. There's no location, but they do know it's going to be broadcast on the DAZN streaming service. What was your thoughts on, number one, the timing, him getting kicking to the curb a couple of promoters that really, in my opinion, have really hindered this guy from being a household name, and two, the fight against Billy Joe Saunders?
Well, as far as getting rid of the promoters, we've spoken about that for years, that this kid is really, his prime is just more or less in front of him, in front of us. His prime is just pretty much dissolving because he's not fighting active enough. He's not getting the purses. I know that a lot of the times he didn't want to take some of these smaller fights because they just weren't worth it. And then in his last couple of performances, even when he went over and he won that belt over there last year, he hasn't looked that sharp. I definitely think that Demetrius Andrade, with all these layoffs, has slipped a little bit, and I think Billy Joe Saunders has gotten better. But, maybe if this fight does get made and we might see Demetrius Andrade step up to that next level, fight up to the level of competition, or somebody actually there in front of him. The two of them at their best, I think that's a very exciting fight. I actually think that would be just as exciting as Canelo versus Triple G in their rematch, and the winners of those two fights going against each other would really set this middleweight division on fire.
You think Billy Joe Saunders is getting better and Andrade is getting worse? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I just think, Andrade in his last couple fights hasn't looked that sharp. He hasn't, his accuracy hasn't been all that. He hasn't fought very inspired. It just seems like he goes in there and does enough to win. Billy Joe Saunders, since, the Andy Lee fight, or should I go back a little bit further to the Chris Eubank Jr. fight, he just seems to get better and add to his game.
Yeah, that's why I blame a lot of Demetrius's lack of good performances, or looking flat in his last performance, is the fact that he didn't fight enough. And I just think that he was either, being forced to outbid themselves for fights, and not everybody can make a stand, and Deontay Wilder could admit that. Just because you're a name and a champion and you want, to make more money, sometimes there comes a limit. And I think that was what has happened with Andrade. So he's got a big opportunity in front of him, but it's going to be hard for him to go from being as dormant inside the ring as he has been and stepping up and fighting a very big middleweight in Billy Joe Saunders, don't you think?
I absolutely, I do. Andrade, he's a big guy himself. 6'1". He's got a long reach. Talk about, having to go into a fight if a fighter's not happy. I was just thinking about the one fight back in 2012 when he fought Rudy Cisneros, and I was ringside. I was actually on the apron, and that was, a look good fight, stay good fight for him. And, his team afterwards was trying to play it up as if this, he just beat a world-class opponent. And one of his team members looked over to me because I was kind of shaking my head as if, really, he didn't do anything here. I don't know why everybody's celebrating so much. And they were like, you didn't like what he just did, is what his corner man asked me. I said, yeah, it looked great, but, when's he going to do this against the top guy? And his cornerman looks straight at me and says, when are they going to pay him the money, and when are they going to stop taking most of his money, and then maybe he can step it up. But it's hard to do that when you're not keeping your own money. So, it's kind of hard to stay focused. It's kind of hard to stay inspired. It's kind of hard to go out there and to look spectacular all the time when most of your money is going to somebody else's pocket. So that might be the reason for Andre in his last few fights or these last few years why he hasn't looked that spectacular. So we'll see what happens when he gets back in there with these top names. Let's see what Eddie Hearn can do for him, and let's see what happens with him against Billy Joe Saunders. But he can't perform like he did against Atlantis Fox or Jack Colque, maybe not even against Willie Nelson. He has to perform like he did against Brian Rose, something like that. Or else Demetrius Andre, he's his prime shucked from him more or less due to bad promotion.
Before we let you go, Dax, next week we'll be doing a post-fight show. Sergey Kovalev is taking on Elder Alvarez, who's a tough opponent, been the mandatory for that guy up in Canada for 150 years, I think, and never got a shot, made more money, more step-aside money than he's ever made in the ring. But it's an interesting fight. Kovalev, since quitting against Andre Ward, he's come back, with 2 wins and stuff. But he just doesn't. He's not the same Kovalev, in my opinion. Especially, and I know Sal agrees with me here. We both just kind of look at him differently because of that last fight with Andre Ward, and how he literally quit. And can a win over Alvarez change that, or can he not even beat Alvarez? What's your thoughts on that fight?
I think he can beat Alvarez, who himself, well, they're in similar age, and even though Alvarez is undefeated, there's a guy that, because step-aside money, he was doing well, had big wins up there over Pascal, Butte. But he doesn't fight that often. This has been over a year. He's had a layoff. He had to win over Chilemba, but he doesn't have really world-class power. Kovalev does have world-class power. Kovalev can deal with a boxer. So this is an interesting fight. If anything is going to happen, it's going to be Alvarez is going to outpoint Kovalev, which I don't know, but this is a hard fight to call. As far as losing the respect for Kovalev, I know a lot of guys, I think they're being a little too hard on Kovalev with the Andre Ward fight. I don't know. I think people just pretty much wrote Kovalev off on that. But this is tough. Both these guys are at the they're in their mid-30s, and there's other guys coming up, and I'm not that excited for the fight.
Well, the co-main event that features Dimitri Bivol. It's assumed anyway that the 2 winners will meet. That could be an interesting fight.
That's what I'm excited for.
Yeah, well,
that Bivol does what Kovalev used to do is when Bivol's going to fight, you get excited because you know that this kid is special and he's going to bring something special in there. And I actually think he's Sergey Kovalev at Kovalev's best, but on levels, because instead of just going in there and being a destroyer, he's actually a very sound technical boxer who knows exactly what his opponent is going to do. He's 2-3 steps ahead of that opponent. And, when you have a guy like that who is young and he's just starting to come into the division, you get excited because you just want to see exactly how far he's going to take it. And, you have these interests where it's, even the fights that he's going to win, you just want to know exactly how dominant of fashion he's going to win in. And I don't think that anybody, including Kovalev, is too excited about Bivol, and it looks to me that the way that even main events with some of these press releases that they have been sending out is almost as if Kovalev himself is being written off by them, and Bivol is being looked at as the new golden boy. And unfortunately for Isaac Chilemba, whose moniker is the golden child, I believe, he just seems to be the one that fed to all these golden boys.
Yeah, it's true. Dax, we'll look forward to you next week, my man. Thanks.
All right, everybody, enjoy the day.
All right,
have a good day, Dax.
Sal, Dax defended Kovalev. The first fight, you could make an argument, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but we're going to take a break and get Alex on right now. But, the first fight, you could make an argument that he was kind of robbed, Kovalev, against Andre Ward. I mean, so. we all kind of thought Kovalev won that fight. Yeah. And then Ward comes back, says he's going to knock out Kovalev, and does. Now, I've never been an Andre Ward fan, ever. There's just something about him. I know he's extremely talented. I don't take anything. I love him as an announcer. But there was always something about this guy I never liked. But I got to be honest, I'm with you. My whole opinion of Sergey Kovalev, the crusher, the destroyer, the this, the that, went out the window. Went out the window. I mean, he was looking for the help from the referee during that fight, and then he ends up getting knocked out with the body shots. I can't look at him the same way. What do you think?
No, nor can I, Bill, and that's the whole thing. I mean, Kathy Duva has her hands full with the promotion, promoting him now, and is the prize worth the price? Can you put that much in? Can he reinvent himself? Can he do something spectacular? Because you know what, before that, he was the crusher. He was this. He was that. You expected to see, especially coming off the first Andre Ward fight, where I do feel in my heart of hearts that he earned a victory in that fight. So, of course, they're both talking smack. They're both saying they're going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to knock this guy out, I'm going to send him to the moon. But guess what? Andre Ward was the one that delivered. And when you see a guy that you hold up way up here go down from a body shot and not really look to make that attempt to even get to one knee, and looking for help from the referee or something else, that's like, hey, get this count over with fast. I mean, believe me, and not to sell it short, we've all been there, that those fighters that have stepped in a ring, and certainly I have too. And like I said, it does not validate what that level of competition and fight and the significance of that fight was all about. And that's what I decided at that night, was to lose the respect that I held him at that level, that high. And I can't do that anymore. And forever he's going to be in my mind, fighter's as good as the last fight. But that's the image I have of him, just on the canvas, looking for the referee to stop the count and get it over with, and not trying to make the effort to remain in a battle.
Well, we'll talk a little more about that fight as we give you our thoughts a little bit later on the show. But first, we're going to take a short break right now. And when we come back, we'll have Alex Papali join us, and we'll get his thoughts on the fights from this past weekend. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in 2.
Billy C will be right back.
Have osteoarthritis in one or both knees? If you have osteoarthritis in one or both knees, are you on Medicare, Obamacare, or other health insurance? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a prescription strength solution for osteoarthritis of the knees, covered by Medicare at little to absolutely no cost to you. We also offer a prescription strength topical pain relief ointment that can be used for pain experienced on other areas of your body. Our experienced staff will work with your doctor and handle all of your Medicare or insurance paperwork. Best of all, your prescription is shipped directly to your home for free. Will you qualify for a prescription strength solution for osteoarthritis of the knee, or for a topical pain relief ointment covered by Medicare or private insurance at little or no cost to you?
Find out for free by calling the Back and Knee Pain Center at 1-800-604-1072. That's 1-800-604-1072, 1-800-604-1072.
Medical alarms for people who fall or have medical emergencies. You never think you'll need one until you do. Hi, I'm Lonnie Anderson for Advantage Alert. Today, our advanced systems locate and protect people inside and outside their homes, plus when they're on the road, allowing users with the press of a button to speak with an operator who can summon help. And even after 30 years, Advantage Alert's products remain amazingly affordable.
Call 800-985-1705.
Addiction is an epidemic in America. If you or someone you love is struggling with addiction, you need to call the R360 Network now.
I'm Ken Seeley, author, addiction recovery specialist, and former addict. R360 is a nationwide network of addiction recovery specialists that I personally selected and recommend.
The call is free, the consultation is free. If you have private insurance, your treatment could be covered with no out-of-pocket cost.
Call 800-705-0023.
Are you currently on Medicare? In other words, do you carry the red, white, and blue Medicare card? If so, are you suffering from chronic back pain? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a pain-relieving back brace covered by Medicare at little to no cost, shipped directly to your home for free. These medical-grade back braces are ideal for lower back pain, arthritis, spinal disorders, and other chronic back problems. Will you qualify for a medical-grade back brace?
Call Back Brace America at 1-800-290-8300.
Now back to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C., the only radio host man enough to take a punch from Mike Tyson.
Wait a minute, man. Hold on there. Jeremy, man, I need you to take this one, all right?
Wait, what? No way. I can't do this.
Need I remind you I'm Billy C., damn it? Now put on that mustache and get in there.
Hey, look at me. I'm Billy C. Crap.
Undisputed heavyweight champion of Boxing Talk Radio. It's Talkin' Boxing with Billy C.
Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're watching and listening to the Billy C. Show. Glad you could be with us. And, he always forgets, man. He always forgets that. He's live, right? He's got, and maybe you guys aren't seeing it, but I have this camera shot right on my man Alex, who's going to be joining us now. What do I got to do? Do I have to get you like a personal makeup artist or something? I mean, the way you're sitting there looking and fixing yourself and getting all good. I mean, what's up with that, man? Come on.
Hey, once you've been in movies, man.
Oh, I know. That's what it is. That's what it has to be. I forgot all about. That's what it is. Alex has been in several movies, and he's a little more apt to cameras than the rest of us. But
I got my own IMDb page, and once that happens, you've got to look at that image there. That's very important.
Well, Sal's been in movies too. He holds his card and everything else, and he doesn't do it. He comes in all. I got to remind him to turn his camera on in the morning.
Compared to Sal, Sal's a good-looking older man. Look at me.
Hey, both of you
I have to take every chance I get.
Both of your egos. We're talking about egos, all right? Both of you, calm down with the egos. Jeez. Alex is demanding a makeup artist. Sal just wants a camera that he remembers to turn on. I mean, come on, man. But anyway, glad you could be with us, Alex. And first and foremost, what was your thoughts on Mikey Garcia's performance last night?
I enjoyed the fights last night. I only saw the Showtime card, so I have some work to do today. I got to see the Chisora Takam fight. I've heard great things about that. I liked the Showtime card a lot. It surprised me a little because I thought it was going to be a little more one-sided. I thought Garcia was really going to batter Robert Easter, and to his credit, it was good fight. But it was not a great fight. I thought Garcia won. I had it 117-110. And I do think that as you guys have said, I think that Errol Spence, as much as I do applaud him for that idea of stepping all the way up to welterweight, I would much rather see him fight Lomachenko. And I think the Spence is too big. But I do think that it was a good card last night. I thought one of the great moments was when Easter was doing well, and Paulie had some really good commentator moments where he pointed out some really exactly what was going on there. And it was great when he was talking about how Easter was really piling up points just by moving away and just sticking the jab. And that Paulie said, I made a career of that. Right. And Al laughed. I thought it was pretty cool because it did show you that, there's lots of different fighters and there's different ways to win in this sport. But when it comes down to it, you got to land punches. And if you're landing lots and lots of jabs, as Steve Farhood said, that, and you've talked about this before, Billy C., when it comes to scoring, how many jabs equals a power punch. And that's exactly what was happening. There were a few rounds where Garcia's output dropped enough that Easter's jabs were enough to win the rounds, I thought. But I thought Ortiz looked good. You know, he may or may not be as old as me. We don't know. But he's got that power. And for a heavyweight division, I love that knockout that he did, because it reminded me very much of when Lennox Lewis knocked out Hasim Rahman, except it was the southpaw version of that. Instead of the left hook right hand, his was the right hook straight left, and his straight left was a lot straighter than the shot Lennox Lewis used to take out Rahman. But
let me jump back to Garcia for a sec. Robert Easter was using a jab, but the problem is that you're supposed to use the jab, aside from Paulie Malignaggi, you're supposed to use the jab to set up other punches, and he was not. He had that one round, I don't know what it was, I don't know if it was the 9th or 10th round, where it was kind of a dogfight between both of them, and it was almost like he said, well, I'm either going to knock him out or he's going to knock me out. And that really was, I still lean towards Mikey Garcia in that round, but that really was what I thought he needed to do from that point on, and then he didn't do it again. The one thing I did notice about Mikey, and like Sal, I've already said to Sal, and you probably know too, I'm a big Mikey Garcia fan, but he looked ordinary against Easter. Do you think it was the height difference?
That could very well be, and I think also, whenever you're faced with movement like that, it's hard to look good.
But he's supposed to know how to cut the ring off.
Right, and I think that was the thing that it did expose, is that he had some difficulties doing that. And you're right, maybe it was not enough body punching, because body punching, of course, takes a guy's legs away.
Effective body. There wasn't enough effective body punches, Alex, because like Sal and I discussed earlier in the show, it seemed that first of all, he's not a body puncher, we know that, but he was trying to work the body, but every time he landed a punch, they were not flush. They went, like when you see a body puncher, the proverbial Mexican body puncher, you see these guys land these shots to the body, it's like, oh man, you feel them. And, although Mikey was landing the punches, they were landing weird. The heel of his hand, the glove, whatever. And they just, I don't know. I don't think any body punch landed hard enough to really make Robert Easter worry about the body punches.
You're right. I think I think part of that was because of Easter's movement, is that Garcia was firing, and by the time the punch got there, the target was moved a little, and I think they even might have mentioned during the fight at one point that it didn't seem like he was turning over his gloves in his punches. You're right, and I think that was mainly because I think a couple of things happened. Is once Easter was stung and got up from the knockdown, and to his credit, made some adjustments, I think one of the things that happened was Garcia was like, okay, well, now I'm going to keep pressing, and he was pressing, and that's mainly what won him a lot of rounds, was just effective aggressiveness and power punching. But I think what was happening was, again, they're closing distance, and maybe that distance wasn't the ideal place where Garcia wanted him so he could really bang him. And I think that's what was happening. So a lot of the punches were more cuffing than they normally would. But I think part of that was Easter was making that happen, because again, I mean, football's a game of inches. Boxing is a game of centimeters. One, because it's international, so they use the metric system. And the other is that you only have to move a little bit to take the sting off a punch, to take the power off a punch. And sometimes a guy is able to do that. And I kind of think that it was Easter that was able to do that.
Slipping in his little humor there, Sal. Hey, with the potential fight, Sal, between Mikey Garcia and Errol Spence. I feel that a effective body attack is a must when you're challenging yourself so hard, the way Mikey Garcia would be against Errol Spence. Errol Spence is a very proficient body puncher. How do you feel that the lack of Mikey Garcia's body attack would affect him in such a big fight, potentially against Errol Spence?
I'll tell you, I see Errol Spence beating Mikey Garcia handedly, and I'll say that right now. I love Mikey Garcia. I think he's a good warrior. I just don't really see his style complementing Errol Spence. I think Errol Spence will roll over him. I think he's going to be not only too big, but I think his effective body shots will keep Mikey guessing, and Mikey's got to develop a little bit more authoritative body shot style if he's going to be looking to slow fighters down. He's got to land those shots proficiently and effectively, and we haven't seen that yet. And I think he can work on it. But again, I think he needs to move his head a little bit more, and I think he needs to bend a little bit at the waist, especially when he's a smaller fighter against a taller opponent. And that's how you can effectively be the aggressor. Cut the ring off. Learn these things. Go pace to pace. Spar. Do what you got to do. Those are effective things to learn. And if he brought that kind of style into the fight against a taller opponent like that, I think he'd be more effective. But yeah, Errol Spence, I don't even see that fight going a distance, and I see Errol Spence winning big.
Alex, against the potential fight against Errol Spence, Mikey Garcia has already said, he doesn't feel he would have any trouble making the 147-pound, weight class. He said that he normally walks around 155 to 158. It feels that he'll make the weight no problem, and he'll put on the weight no problem, I should say. But he also recognizes the fact that Errol Spence Jr. will come down to make the weight, but then fight night would probably be substantially bigger. So therefore, Mikey Garcia would be fighting a much bigger opponent. Do you feel that Mikey's style, and not yesterday, because I didn't think he showed the ring savvy that he normally does, but do you think that that'll help him against Spence? I mean, as much as we all think Spence is such a great fighter, he's still a young guy, Alex, and he's still, most of his experience at the pro level the toughest opponent he's had so far was Kell Brook. Mikey Garcia,
it's a pretty tough opponent.
It certainly is. It certainly is. But that was also a Kell Brook that had one orbital bone busted up in the previous fight against Triple G, and lost another one in the fight against Errol Spence. But is Garcia good enough to overcome a very good bigger fighter?
That's what we'd have to find out, and I don't know. I don't think so. I think that, to me, Errol Spence is one of the best fighters in the world. And Mikey Garcia is too, but Errol Spence is, 2 weight classes larger. I don't know. I think part of why we're talking about it isn't it because we don't want, one of the things that was really cool last night, Billy C., about that whole event was, and I can't help but thinking about it in terms of the blast, is some of those great moments when you're reading about old fights, is they mention who was in the crowd, and you're like, oh my God, look how many great fighters went to this fight. Well, that was so neat at the beginning of the fight when they panned the crowd and they were showing so many guys. Jarrett Hurd was there, Sean Porter, Adrian Broner, of course, kind of stole the show and they put the camera on him.
But that's Showtime promoting their fighters, right?
True, absolutely.
That's great. It's great.
It was like a great big Al Heyman backyard barbecue because everybody was Al Heyman fighters, but of course Al Heyman was not there. Mr.
That we know of, because he's not.
You could see Steven Espinosa, and you could see what's his name,
Schaefer.
Richard Schaefer. But of course, Al Heyman, if he was there, we'd never on camera. But the Watson twins were, and Sam Watson. But I do think that, so I don't know, I like that. I think the reason why he's talking about Errol Spence, to me, yeah, let's see that fight in a year and a half, 2 years. Let him grow into welterweight. To me, it's kind of like, don't talk about Lomachenko because we're not working with Top Rank.
No, I think that the reason that Lomachenko is because it's the weight. He thinks that Lomachenko, it would be harder to make the fight with Lomachenko because Lomachenko is already talking on a possible, catch weight or something, And remember, Lomachenko's a smaller guy. Garcia's 30 years old. He's looking to get a huge payday. He's going to make a lot of money to fight Errol Spence.
Right. So to me, it's like, why wouldn't Garcia fight Lomachenko in the fight where you have the advantage? Give the weight advantage, then move up and fight Errol Spence. Errol Spence is young. He's got the better reaction time. He's bigger. He's stronger. To me, yeah, he's going to beat Mikey Garcia.
Well, let me ask you this. Both of you. Who's the better pound-for-pound fighter right now, in your opinion? Errol Spence or Vasily Lomachenko?
Vasily Lomachenko.
Yeah. What do you think, Sal? Hold on.
I think Vasily Lomachenko is, and I think he'd also beat Garcia.
Well, see, so my point is maybe Mikey Garcia actually thinks that he's got a better chance to beat Errol Spence than Lomachenko. I mean, that could be a possibility, right?
That could be.
Could be. It's just what I really can't get past is my admiration for Mikey Garcia to even talk about doing that. When was the last time a fighter moved up and down in weight and has been as successful as Mikey Garcia? I mean, great fighters, and Alex, you and I have talked about this a million times. Right, but you and I have talked about this many, many times. I mean, great fighters, the all-time greats, have all done things that were outside the box and made you say, wow, I didn't think he was going to win that. I mean, people, when people discredit Roy Jones Jr. for beating John Ruiz, well, he only beat John Ruiz. Whoa. Yeah. I still give him credit for doing it because John Ruiz was a world heavyweight champion. Forget it, So, anyway, speaking of heavyweights, Luis Ortiz, in his fight against Razvan Cojanu, no disrespect to Cojanu, but this was the perfect opponent for Ortiz. I do believe that he will get another shot at Deontay Wilder. I'm not so sure that the outcome will be any different. But what was your thoughts of that fight? I mean, were you able to see anything other than just Ortiz getting a win, and then of course the emotional Ortiz about some disease his daughter had that they came up with a cure for, which was fantastic. I even thought I noticed Jim Gray, who I think is one of the scurviest pieces of garbage on the planet, actually become human when he heard that. What was your thoughts?
He's like the Grinch, his cold heart.
Yeah.
Two sizes.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought Ortiz looked good, and I thought he looked as I think it was mission accomplished for him because he had to look good and keep hope alive, if you will, about another shot at a title, at a Deontay Wilder. Remember, he was very close to winning at a few points in that fight with Deontay Wilder. So if we're going to still sort of let this Joshua Wilder bout marinate for a while, then why not have a rematch with Ortiz? I think, yeah, he did everything he could to keep that idea alive. And in a way, in the heavyweight division, sometimes this could work against you because the only thing he kept alive for himself was that Wilder rematch because nobody else is going to want to fight him because he still looked very dangerous. He's got a lot of pop, and he's a southpaw. He's a smart boxer. He could be as old as the hills. We don't know.
Well, the amazing thing is he's getting younger. He's getting younger, which is amazing.
My playbook.
It's amazing. But Sal, I know you have Deontay Wilder boxer trunks that you wear under your jeans. But the truth of the matter is a rematch with Luis Ortiz. The WBC has at least verbally paved the way for a rematch prior to his mandatory, which is Dominic Breazeale, which he technically doesn't have to fight till the end of the year, and they would grant him a voluntary defense against Ortiz. This could be a fight where he could make some extra money. I think that there would be a demand for that rematch because of what Alex just said, that Ortiz was holding his own. And with that said, do you think that Deontay Wilder would go in there with the mindset of I'm got to take Ortiz out quicker and feeling that he's already taken the best punch that Ortiz can give him? Do you think he goes in there with a little less respect for Ortiz the second time around than he did the first time?
Yes, I do. I do. As we were talking about that scenario, and I do see Deontay Wilder having a little bit earlier success and looking a little more dominant. I think he's got his number. I think that Ortiz would put up a couple good rounds, but I think Deontay Wilder has learned more from that fight than I think Ortiz would learn to fight Deontay Wilder. Because again, Deontay Wilder, he's unpredictable. And that's why when you fight somebody like that, you cannot prepare. You don't know what's going to come, when it's going to come, and that's why he's had his level of success as he has. He throws punches in bunches, and he's got that haymaker. And when you're not ready for it, it's going to catch you. And so that's why I think Deontay Wilder will win more dominantly in a shorter period of time if he fought Luis Ortiz again.
The thing is, though, Alex, is that, the one thing that Ortiz will bring, and I do agree that I think that Wilder, because he's not the sharpest tool in the shed, will come right after Ortiz and try and take him out quicker. But the one thing won't change, and that's Luis Ortiz is a southpaw, and I think that was really some of the problem that Deontay had, was the fact that, these punches were coming from a southpaw stance, which let's face it, I mean, with all the cupcakes that he's been fed, aside from the fact that I'm surprised he's not a diabetic, Wilder hasn't seen much, difference in styles. I mean, he's hand-fed the same stuff over and over. Do you think the southpaw will still hurt him?
Yeah, I think that's always going to be one of the best arrows in Ortiz's quiver, because I think that that's especially at heavyweight, guys just aren't expect to see that, and he uses the angle well. He's not because he has such that Cuban pedigree of that long amateur career, he fights behind the southpaw angle. He doesn't square up. He doesn't sort of give it away. His punches are straight. And he's still got pretty quick hands.
You think so? I was just going to ask you, do you really think that he's got quick hands? Because, I was really in the short, even though the fight was so short, I was really looking, because I think that his hand speed, I don't think he's any faster than Deontay Wilder, to be honest. Now, Deontay Wilder throws his punches from crazy angles.
Punches. Yeah, that could be the advantage, because even though he's not fast in terms of his reaction time, is not as quick as Deontay Wilder's, straight punches get there quicker.
Yeah.
And he throws straighter punches. So, like, his jab's going to get there quicker, his straight left's going to get there quicker. And last night it was the straight left.
But what he's got to do is be able to avoid Deontay's punches more in the second fight, because Deontay's going to come out trying to take his head off. I mean, I would think so. I mean, Sal just agreed before as well. What, Sal? What with the raising of the hands? What?
Part of how I feel about Deontay Wilder,
which I'm still shocked over. But
part of that reasoning is this too, though. I think a lot of people forget, and maybe you think I give it too much credence, but
I do.
I know he's got a world-class trainer in Mark Breland. Yeah. And I also think that, guess what? When you have a fight and you are seeing a deficit in your arsenal or something else, you go to the gym and you work on it with your trainer. And the same thing is to be said. Now, do you think Deontay Wilder is not going to have a slew of big heavyweight southpaws for sparring partners that are going to be decently schooled and give him what he's got to look at?
How many big giant southpaw heavyweights are there, Sal?
Well, you got a point.
Yeah, and let me let me just tell you this.
Well,
let me just say this. Let's just say this, all right? I am 100% in agreement with you and Mark Breland. But what we have seen with Deontay Wilder is that he doesn't listen. Are you telling me that Mark Breland is telling him to go headhunting? Sal, you admitted to me more than once that 99.99% of the fighters, when they get in trouble, they revert back to what comes normally and naturally to them. And what Deontay Wilder has, which has bailed his ass out of trouble every fight for 40 wins, is his punching power. So when he got hurt against Luis Ortiz, he was in kill or be killed mode, and he came out on top. That is probably his worst weakness, because he's got so much power that he relies on it when the going gets tough rather than listen to the things that Mark Breland is trying to teach him. He utilized his jab and movement once in 40 fights, and that was his first fight against Berman Stavern. So although I give Breland a lot of credit, the fighter has to respond and listen to his trainer. You could have the best trainer in the world teaching you every trick known to man, and when the bell rings, all you're looking at is to take your opponent's head off, and that's what I think he does.
Well, it may be, but I also think that, being well-schooled, and we did say, you're going to revert back to what comes to you naturally, or that's innate, and that's your instincts. But the bottom line is, if they're preparing him differently, hey, when you get hurt like this, instead of doing that, think about this. Take a step back, keep your hands up, reassess, go in, do this. You can be schooled on it. And, once in the heat of battle, all bets are off, but a good student will remember what he's taught, what he's learned, because that learned habit over time, in the gym, day in, day out, that will then become more natural for you to do. So what I'm predicating or basing my opinion on is that you do have a competent professional world-class trainer in Mark Breland that would drill these things in, so it does become what Deontay Wilder could revert back to if he gets in that heated position or heated situation. So, like I said, I think the best Deontay Wilder we still have not seen, because he's going to rise to the level of competition that he's being fed. And again, what we saw when he fought Ortiz was a Deontay Wilder that could take a hell of a shot, and that just still came back, picked himself up, and came back to win. I'm going to say that I think he's going to be more effective the next time out if he faces a southpaw, and I still feel that he's a progress. He's in motion. He's learning and he's developing. And I think when you rely on one thing and you go on what's innate, you're going to react, you're going to respond. But with over time, the drilling, I think we're still going to see the best Deontay Wilder in the future.
I think we've already seen the best Deontay Wilder, and that was against Ortiz. Hey, Alex, before we let you go, what's your thoughts? Next week we're going to be doing the post-fight as soon as Kovalev and Elder Alvarez is over. Do you see this being a tough fight for Kovalev?
I don't see it being real difficult, no. But I do think that he's still in a point where he has to look good. And I think it was sort of interesting because just the other day, was it yesterday or 2 days ago, Andre Ward tweeted something suggesting, he said something about a comeback or something like that. Or something about missing boxing. I forget. I thought that was kind of interesting with with the Bivol Kovalev doubleheader coming up. I wonder if he's going to be doing the announcing too.
I think if he comes back, it's going to be heavyweight.
Really?
Or
Well, that would be
cruiserweight, or cruiserweight. You know, because to come back just as a light heavyweight, what's he going to prove? Hey, listen, he wasn't a sell before. He's not a sell now. I hope he never comes back. Really,
it's too bad. I don't know. I think because I was never a huge fan. I mean,
neither.
I think his two best, most entertaining fights were his last two, and his best. He retired after his best win.
I agree with that. He went out knocking out and making Kovalev quit. I don't know if a swan song could better that. I really don't.
Right, and that. So, but in terms of Kovalev next week, I am looking forward to it because even though in Ward's absence, Kovalev is the best guy at 175. However, Bivol is the one who's maybe the one who's going to challenge that title down the road. So I like when HBO does this, or when anybody does this, when they put double headers between two guys that at some point we might want to see clash, and you get to see them fight right after each other. So in that sense, it's cool. And plus, Bivol is fighting Chilemba, a guy that we've seen against Kovalev before. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope it's a good double header. Kovalev, remember, it wasn't just Andre Ward that broke him. It was his own sort of hubris, I think, and maybe that's one of the reasons why what Dax was pointing out, that maybe he seemed to notice main events didn't seem quite as excited about Kovalev as they used to be, is that he might have burnt some bridges. Remember, he fired John David Jackson. There's lots of rumors about just plain hubris from Kovalev. I don't know. To me, I don't mind that, I guess, from him a little bit, because it takes all kinds in this sport, and some of these guys might be proud, arrogant jerks, and so...
I was just going to say, come on, Sal stays right there. It's not like I have him muted, I mean, come on. Talking about Sal.
Hey, easy.
But no.
We're not all jerks.
So listen, Alex.
Most fighters that I've met personally are some of the nicest people in the world.
90% of them.
That right.
Kovalev is that he's not the easiest guy to work with.
No,
he's got an air of arrogance around him and everything else, and in his mind he's an elitist, and but you see elitists quit on the floor.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Alex, we'll be looking for you next week, my man.
Looking forward to it, guys. Have a great one.
All right,
take care. Al.
That's Alex Papali giving us his thoughts on the fights and some other stuff. So I was appreciate Alex, and he'll be with us. We're doing our post-fight next week, and not sure if it's going to be as soon as the fight is over or early Sunday morning. We'll make that decision this week. But look for our Kovalev Alvarez post-fight show. And with that said, Sal, let's take a look at these guys. Elder Alvarez has been the mandatory for the WBC World Light Heavyweight Champion. It was interesting to hear Alex say that Sergey Kovalev, in his opinion, is the best light heavyweight in the world. And actually, Kovalev is ranked number 2 by the computer, and they actually have Adonis Stevenson as number 1, which shocks the hell out of me. A guy that really has held that title hostage. But Elder Alvarez has been his mandatory for the WBC forever. He's not rated right now only because his last fight was a little over a year ago. His 4 biggest wins of his career, you go back, these are my opinion, in 2014 he fought Rhino Lionberg. At the time was an up-and-coming guy. He was 16-0, and a lot of fanfare was being built around Lionberg. And Alvarez beat him, stopped him in the 7th of a scheduled 12-round fight. You fast-forward it, his win over Isaac Chilemba in 2015, a close fight. He won a 12-round majority decision. His knockout, 5th-round knockout over Lucien Boutte in February of last year, and then his last fight, a 12-round majority decision, which I don't believe it should have been even that close on the cards, but against Jean Pascal. Those are actually Alvarez's best fights. Of course, he's 23-0 with 11 knockouts. He's 34 years old, only 1 year younger than Kovalev. He's got the WBC silver light heavyweight championship belt, which is really the WBC's version of the interim title. This kid can fight, but he steps in with Sergey Kovalev. In my opinion, Kovalev is a better fighter. He's currently the WBO World Light Heavyweight Champ. Like I said earlier, he is ranked number 2 by the computer. He's got a 2-inch height advantage over Alvarez at 6'2" versus 6 foot. However, he's got a shorter reach disadvantage by almost 3 full inches. He's got a record of 32 wins, 2 losses, and 1 draw. Both his losses coming at the hands of Andre Ward in their first fight in November of 2016. I feel that he beat Andre Ward. They had the rematch, and that's when Sal and I lost a lot of respect for Sergey Kovalev. He was stopped in the 8th round, quit. Has followed that up with 2 knockout victories, V. Sabrinansky and Igor McLaughlin in his last fight, stopping both these guys. And when you look through his resume, I mean, really, he's fought and beat a lot of quality fighters. I mean, Isaac Chilimba, Jean Pascal, he beat twice. B-Hop, he beat Cedric Agnew. Nathan Cleverly, Cornelius White was an undefeated, actually once beaten fighter when he fought Kovalev. So, I mean, Kovalev has certainly paid his dues. In this particular fight, I think it's going to be an exciting fight, Sal. I mean, what's your thoughts on how the outcome, well, before we get to the outcome, how do you think the fight's going to go?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think the fight's going to go fairly well and develop, and I think we'll see some times in the trenches, but I don't care if you're elder Alvarez or younger Alvarez. All I would be doing is concentrating on the soft body that we may see from Kovalev. So I think a body attack and a relentless body attack would prove to be successful for Alvarez to work on. And I'm talking about going after that body, feinting to the head, and digging in and trying to hit him, move side to side, on the sides and the solar plexus, everywhere. I think a body attack is what any opponent right now has got to go in and try and expose and dispose of Kovalev. But I think it's going to be a good fight, and I can't discount Kovalev from learning from his fight, even though he's up there, and to try and keep away and box and use his range and use his power. So the experience and the power and everything else goes on Kovalev's side. And do I see Alvarez putting up a good fight? Yes, I do. I see him trying to be effective and maybe getting Kovalev in a little trouble, but I do see Kovalev probably outboxing him and going on to a victory and maybe even landing one of his haymakers and good shots and then knocking him out.
What has made Sergey Kovalev successful throughout his career is his punching power and the fact that he goes in for the kill. As far as overall boxing ability, I mean, at times he has shown that he can box. I'm not sure what game plan he's going to go after Alvarez. Alvarez is not known for being a big knockout puncher. I mean, he's got 11 knockouts of his 23 wins. Gives him a 48% knockout ratio. Certainly does not have the rounds under his belt that you would think. Although he's got more rounds than Kovalev has, even though he's got less fights. So, he does go the distance, is my point. He does know how to box. And as we saw with Andre Ward against Kovalev, if you know how to box and neutralize his coming forward approach, then a lot of times you have a good chance. The other thing Dax mentioned earlier, John David Jackson was in Kovalev's corner up until his last fight. So, you know what? Was it his last two? I believe it was just his last fight. So, it seems like Kovalev is in this seek and destroy mode, and maybe Alvarez isn't the guy to do that against. At the end of the day, I think that this fight is going to be closer than we would think because of Alvarez's boxing ability. The question is going to be, and they're both similar in age, Kovalev's 35 and Alvarez is 34. It's going to be interesting to see if Kovalev can keep a constant pressure on Alvarez and actually wear him down, because I think that that's the key to this fight. I think that Alvarez is going to try to outbox Kovalev, and Kovalev's job is to be defensively sound in the first part of the fight and be 100% offensively minded in the second part of the fight. I'm looking for Alvarez to tire a little bit, and I think Kovalev is going to win. Although I think the neutralizer is exactly what you said, Sal. If Alvarez can work the body, we've seen it time and time again that Kovalev does not like to get hit in the body, especially when Andre Ward is hitting him below the belt. But that's besides the point. So I, too, am picking Kovalev in this one. What makes this fight even more interesting is the co-main event. Dmitry Bivol is taking on Isaac Chilimba. Now, Isaac Chilimba is one of these fighters that is always in the mix with light heavyweights on their way up. He's a former world title challenger. He's ranked number 14 in the world today. As of today, his record is 25 wins, 5 losses, and 2 draws. 10 of his wins coming by knockout. Of his 5 losses, he's only been stopped once. But here's the thing. In his last 5 fights, he's only got 2 wins and 3 losses, and one of those losses was the one by stoppage. The wins, well, they weren't exactly over world beaters. He won a 10-round decision over Vasily Lepikin in March of 2015, and in his very last fight, he beat Blake Caparello via a 12-round decision in March of this year. His losses, he lost to the same guy who's fighting Sergey Kovalev next week, a 12-round majority decision to Elder Alvarez, which many people thought was a close fight. That took place in, including the judges, that took place in November of 2015. In July of 2016, he lost a 12-round decision to Sergey Kovalev, and then he was stopped. 4 months later, he took a fight against Alexander Godzvadik and got stopped the only time in his career. That was November of that same year. And he steps in with a young gun. And Dmitry Bivol is ranked number 4 in the world by the computer. He's a light heavyweight champion. His last 3 fights really, in my opinion, were against the toughest opposition he's faced. In June of 2017, he beat Cedric Agnew, stopping him in the 4th. In November of the same year, he destroyed Trent Broadhurst, knocking him out in the very first round. And in his last fight, which was March of this year, he won a 12-round stoppage over Sullivan Barrera. And Sullivan Barrera is a highly touted light heavyweight. That's when he won his WBA light heavyweight championship. And he is the WBA light heavyweight champion. But I think that Dmitry Bivol is going to come out on top like he's supposed to, and it's going to lead and pave the way for a match between Bivol and whoever wins between Alvarez and Kovalev, and I'm sure Main Events is hoping it's Kovalev.
I think you just hit it right on the point, and I cannot disagree with anything you said across the board.
Well, I think that it ought to be an interesting night of fights next week. With both of these fights, we'll be able to be watching in the light heavyweight division. It's a division that used to be a glamour division that really is waiting for more. I mean, Andre Ward is an extremely talented fighter. There's no question about it, but the lack of promotion of him, or just the way he is, his personality, he wasn't a guy that had a huge following. I mean, this was and he's a diva, and this was a guy that couldn't even sell out his own local venues. So, and he's retired now. And when he left, he kind of left the void. There's a lot of interest in Bivol. There used to be a lot of interest in Kovalev, but. Just like you, Sal, I'm with you with Kovalev. And I used to love Kovalev. So did you.
I know. Me too.
And me too. It's funny because in MMA, you're allowed to tap out. And nobody ever gives you a hard time. No, he tapped out. Basically, you quit.
Tapped out.
You quit, right? Well, in boxing, for some reason, when you do that, you're forever crucified. And I think my hang-up with that particular fight was that he talked more smack than he ever talked, Sal. And you guys know me. I don't mind smack talk, but you got to back it up. So he talks all this smack. He's going to destroy. He's going to knock him out. He's going to do this. And then he ends up getting knocked out himself and quits. And, oh, by the way, did I forget to mention that Andre Ward said, we're going to knock him out, and did. So, I mean, you got to respect that. So a lot of
You're right. I mean, and that's exactly my whole path of why I arrived at where I am with him now. I mean, you hear what a fighter wants to tout, wants to profess, and wants to do, and when push comes to shove and you see the opposite, it puts a blemish there. And if he didn't shout out, if he didn't say he was going to do this, he was going to do that, and everything else, but you and I saw the fight. He didn't even really make that effort to get up, to struggle, to do whatever. And then when you see a fighter do that and quit, it's hard for me to regain a level of respect.
When people talk smack, I just want them to try to back it up. Now, in that fight, Andre Ward clearly was going for the knockout. I still would have respected Andre Ward for trying to go for the knockout when he said he was going to go for the knockout, versus watching Sergey Kovalev quit. After he said, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I get you in that ring, oh boy, am I going to give you some of these and some of those, and then the next thing you know, he's quitting, but in any event, we'll have to wait. We will be doing a post-fight show after that fight. Just look on our Facebook or Twitter page to get the time. It's either going to be immediately after the fight on Saturday night, or it'll be the following morning early. So make sure you stay tuned for that. One last thing I do want to mention, Sal, is, as much as I didn't think that the Mikey Garcia fight was one of his best, I can't emphasize enough how much I respect him for going after not just a guy in the welterweight division, which incidentally he's never fought in that division before, but not just going after some welterweight. He's going after arguably the best welterweight in the division. I mean, you can make an argument between him and Terrence Crawford, and if you still remember that guy's name, what's his name? Keith Thurman. He's going after the guy that most people think is the best. So I respect that, and like I keep emphasizing, and you could read between the lines here, boys and girls, the truth of the matter is great fighters do great things just like this. Fighters that claim they're the greatest, that have never challenged themselves, are not that great. That's just my opinion. And I think that Mikey Garcia, even if he lost that fight against Errol Spence, would deserve a hell of a lot more credit. At least will get a hell of a lot more credit from me versus a fighter that never even challenged himself that drastically at all. So you can read between the lines there. Any final thoughts, Sal?
No, final thoughts. I will tell you this. I do appreciate and I do like the job that Paulie Malignaggi does on Showtime, and I like to hear his perspective because he's been there, has done that, and I think it should not go unnoted that he does speak from one fighter to another. He does speak with the experience of being there and have done that. So he does a great job. I like Paulie Malignaggi and Al Bernstein, the whole team there. They do a real good job. So I was glad to hear that. And,
Ronaldo. He's the worst. Mario Ronaldo.
I have no problem with him.
I hate him. I have no problem with him. And let me tell you this. I will say this. As much as I hate him, and he has ruined almost every broadcast I've ever watched that he's on, especially when he's working with Paulie and Al, because Paulie and Al, and I agree with everything you said, all the accolades you gave them, they're both tops. I can't stand Steve Gray and what's his name? Jim Gray. Steve Farhood is good. Does a good job. I love Steve Farhood and Barry Tompkins. Those guys are real good when we got to watch them. But I will say this, as much as I despise Mario Ronaldo, and I feel that he's the worst thing about Showtime's boxing, I will say this. Get ready.
I can't wait.
I didn't think he was as bad as he usually was in last night's fight. He didn't.
Excuse me. I didn't hear that.
No, you heard.
You said it. Wait.
I'm telling
my
you.
microphone's going out. Let me.
For some
Go
reason,
ahead, say that one more
for
time.
some reason, he didn't aggravate me as much as he usually did. Now, he wasn't yelling and screaming, and he limited his stupid, sick jokes to maybe 1,000 instead of 20,000. But he wasn't as bad as he usually was. And you know what else? I thought the referee, Jack Reese, I thought that he did a decent job, and he's been bad recently. Like, he thinks, he's the star of the fight, and he did a good job. There was one point during the Garcia Easter fight where Easter was holding on, and Mikey Garcia was punching his way out, and Reese let him punch his way out rather than rush over there and break the two up, which a lot of referees have been doing these days. So I got to agree with you. I thought that the broadcast yesterday was great, but I still say, if it was up to me, Mario Ronaldo, fire his ass, because he's the worst in the business. But
there was a moment there just now. It's like when you growing up. What did we watch? That the Burgermeister Burger, the claymation, the holiday thing. Remember the Mr. Frosty or the ice guy?
Yeah.
When he melts. That was you. Your heart. You just melted. You did a great job.
I'm just giving him credit. I mean, he wasn't as annoying. Maybe it was because I had 9 scotches when I was. I don't know. But
hey, that could help.
In any event, hey, listen, boys and girls, make sure you tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, I'll leave you with this. Ciao, baby.